Today, we're diving deep into a character who's just ferocious in his ambition. A man who completely bulldozed the gangster archetype and became this, well, this dark symbol of the American dream, Tony Montana. He's the refugee who, literally through sheer force of will, clawed his way right to the top of a cocaine empire.
I mean, seriously, this one line? It tells you everything you need to know. That is Tony Montana. It's his defiant, you could say perverse, but totally unshakable personal code. It's what makes him so magnetic, even as we watch him spiral into complete madness.
Okay, but before we go any further, let's get one thing crystal clear. We're here to understand Tony's rise, not to celebrate it. His whole empire was built on a foundation of brutality, murder, and just pure despair. So our goal is to analyze the man without ever excusing the monster. So, here's how we're gonna break this down. We'll start by looking at his warped idea of the American dream and see how he was forged in repression. Then, we'll follow his narcissistic climb to power, the absolute horror he finds at the top, the betrayal that finally breaks him, and in the end, the echo of evil he leaves behind. To really get a handle on his twisted dream, we have to go back, right back to the beginning. We need to look at the crucible that made him who he is, his repressive life back in Cuba. His journey is like a map of pure, escalating ambition. He starts with absolutely nothing under this oppressive government, an environment that, it didn't break him. It just made him harder. For him, prison wasn't the end. It was a bizarre kind of opportunity, his ticket out. He lands in the US literally labeled an undesirable, but all he sees is a land of opportunity just waiting to be taken by force. And living under that kind of pressure, it cooks up a pretty intense psychological cocktail. You've got this unbreakable spirit of defiance, bred from resisting constant state control. His smaller size probably fueled this over-the-top macho persona, this constant need to prove he's the toughest guy in the room. His ambition? Lit on fire by movies that glorified American gangsters. And that scar? It's basically a permanent badge of honor for the trouble his attitude always found.
All right, so let's see how all those ingredients come together to fuel his insane, meteoric rise in Miami. The very personality that was forged in Cuba is exactly what allowed him to climb so fast. And right at the center of it all is one single dominant trait.
Narcissism. But for Tony, this isn't just about looking in the mirror. No. It's his armor. It's this deep, unshakable belief that he's the best, that he's literally bulletproof. And that conviction is what lets him stare right down the barrel of a gun to take risks no one else would dare, because in his mind, he just can't lose. And this is what makes him so complicated, right? Because on one hand, you've got these qualities that are, well, kind of admirable. His tenacity is off the charts, that unbreakable will, his fierce loyalty to the very few people he cares about. But then, on the other hand, those exact same traits are what fuel a life of absolute horror. The two sides are totally inseparable, and that's what makes him such a fascinating, tragic figure.
So he makes it, he gets to the top of the mountain. But here's the thing about getting everything you ever wanted. The dream of being on top very quickly sours into a lonely, violent nightmare.
And it really makes you ask the central question of his whole story. What is the price of being the king? What does it actually cost a guy like Tony to finally have the world in his hands?
I mean, the change is just jarring when you look at it side by side. The hunger and ambition that drove him, replaced by crippling paranoia and addiction. The loyalty and brotherhood he valued so much, all gone, replaced by total isolation and this constant fear of betrayal. And the sheer excitement of the climb becomes the pure, empty horror of being all alone at the top. But even then, when he's at his absolute worst, drowning in it all, we get this tiny flicker of his old code. When he's ordered to kill a man's innocent wife and kids, he refuses. He just won't do it. It's the one line he won't cross. It's the last glimpse we get of the principled man he always claimed to be, right before he shatters completely. And that one decision, that single act of morality, it's the domino that topples his entire world. This is the absolute point of no return, and it's triggered by what his broken mind sees as the ultimate betrayal. And man, does it all fall apart fast. First, he hits absolute rock bottom. His wife leaves, his enemies are closing in. Then, in this haze of despair and paranoia, he finds his sister, Gina, with his best friend, Manny. And that's it. His mind just snaps. In his eyes, this is the final betrayal. So he kills Manny, his brother.
And this isn't just murder, it's an act of self-annihilation. He destroys his only true friend, and in doing so, completely destroys himself.
So where does that leave us? What's the final legacy here? It's not one of triumph, it's really just an echo of pure, wasted potential. And that's the real gut punch of his story, isn't it? The sheer potential this guy had. The charisma, the unstoppable will, the raw, natural talent. He could have been great at almost anything. He could have built a legitimate empire. But instead, he chose a path of blood, greed, and total destruction. In the end, it's almost poetic. The very engine that rocketed him to the top, that narcissistic belief that he was invincible, untouchable, well, it had no brakes. It blinded him completely. He was sprinting at full speed, totally unaware that he was just inches from the edge of a cliff.
Which leaves us with one last thing to chew on. When you think about the world he chose, the brutal rules he lived by, and the man he became, was his violent, complete destruction something he deserved? Or from the moment he stepped off that boat, was it all just inevitable?